Holy coughing fit, Batman. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. I'm Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today, this beautiful Monday morning. I believe it's a holiday in some parts of the world today, including where I am. But nevertheless, I thank you for joining me anyway. This is the weekly live stream where we talk about entrepreneurship and business, and obviously side hustles, which is like the sort of mini version of entrepreneurship, which is a really awesome thing. This is an interactive Q&A. So if you see my face, if you're a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to see the chat box. Get in the chat box, ask me some questions. That's what I'm here for, to answer your questions. The topic of this episode, the name of this episode is an MBA a waste of time for entrepreneurs? And this is episode number 91. This is a topic that I've spoken about a lot of times before. This is a very important topic to me because I believe that I've heard so much misinformation about this on both sides of this argument for quite a long time. And so being someone who's had a career in entrepreneurship and I have an MBA, I obviously am quite invested in this. And it's a very important topic. And there's a lot of people out there that are wanting to be entrepreneurs. They're wanting to get out of the rat race of being an employee and learn how to generate value themselves, to turn their value into cash directly without having to go through an intermediary like an employer. You know, what they do is they take your value, they earn money with it, and then they give you a portion of it. You know, and for some people, they learn how to do that themselves, to transform their own value into money directly without an intermediary. And that, of course, are people that are entrepreneurs and business owners and things like that. And this is an incredible thing. I highly recommend it if you have any kind of desire to do this. Either you're attracted to it from the point of view of having another income stream, which is attractive in itself, but also you might be attracted to the idea from the creative side of things. You know, you're not really a follower, you're more of a leader, you want to go your own path, you got your own ideas, right? And you're willing to put your money where your mouth is, whether you're coming at it from that direction or the direction of simply, you know, looking at it from a financial perspective. This is a good thing, and I encourage it, and you can do it. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some learning, but you can get there. It's not the end of the world. Many, many people are successful in entrepreneurship, and there's never been a better time to do it. So I think this is a very exciting topic. Math Proofs is here. Math Proofs says hi. Hi, Math Proofs. Thank you for joining me today. Let's see if my other camera is working properly here. Here we go. You know, it's always a bit of a gear shift for me going from my day job to going live on my YouTube channel, talking about a different thing, like just immediately. You know, it's a bit of a gear shift, and I've gotten better over it over the years, but it still always takes me a little bit by surprise, and it got to sort of shift gears and get into this. So I appreciate your patience with me. There are 5 people here. Thank you for joining me today. You guys are awesome. Okay, yeah. So the question is, do you need an MBA? Now, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be somebody that, you know, you take your financial life in your hands, as it were, right? Do you need this? And I very clearly am biased to say yes. That's what I did. I wholeheartedly recommend it. Is it absolutely necessary? No. You can get people that, and a lot of people do, they succeed in business without having learned business in school, right? And the analogy I always use, it's like Hollywood. It's like if you want to be a Hollywood actor, right? Do you need to go to drama school? Do you need to learn Shakespeare? Do you need to do plays and like stuff like that if you want to be the next Tom Cruise, right? Now, a lot of people, a lot of actors, they do go to drama school. They learn their craft and they come out of drama school, and, you know, that's one of the things that allows them to crush it. Is it the be-all, end-all? No. They have a lot of luck. They have incredibly good looks. They have a lot of natural talent. And there's a few other things, right, that they have. So it's not the be all end all, but one could make a very good argument that if you want to be an actor, it's kind of a good thing to go to drama school and learn how to act, right? It's the same that way in business, as far as I'm concerned. Do you need to learn the theory of business to be in business? No, you don't. A lot of people succeed despite not really understanding business. But it helps, right? It's a good thing. If you understand the theory about what you're doing, if you learn your craft, it helps. It's like anything else. Do you need to go and become a journeyman plumber if you want to be a plumber for a living? No. You could probably pick up stuff as you go along, but it helps, right? So that's pretty much my position on it, and I would encourage everyone to check that out. I don't think anyone serious maintains that you just need an MBA and no experience to know everything. No, I don't think that's a thing. But I think a lot of people would argue that an MBA in conjunction with a lot of experience is a very powerful thing indeed. Doc Unstopped is talking about job interviews. So this is a live stream where we don't talk about job interviews. We're talking about entrepreneurship, startups, and in this case, Masters of Business Administration. So hopefully that makes sense. I will be back this afternoon in 2 hours with a live stream where we talk about job search and stuff like that. So if you want to catch me then, please do, and I'll be happy to answer all that stuff. Yeah, so there's a lot of arguments against this. There's a lot of arguments for this. When I recently kind of all but gave up on LinkedIn. That's something that's happened to me recently. I've been sort of using LinkedIn less and less for several years. I used to be on there quite a lot. I built up my consulting business basically around LinkedIn and connecting with people and then meeting them and all this kind of thing, doing networking through that. And then ever since I've been sort of like ramping it down and down and down. And I've taken the latest step just like within the last 2 days, because I go on there. And one of the things is that you see in your feed is people you don't know, organizations you don't know. I don't know why they're in my feed arguing about this, saying like you need an MBA, or other people saying, no, you don't need an MBA. It's like this kind of stupid feud that people have, and that's the deal. So, it's silly. It's really silly. Now, in the past, there's been several arguments against an MBA, which I can get on board with. One of them being that it's so extraordinarily expensive, right? When you see universities and stuff charging you like $50,000 plus for an MBA, which is, just so everyone knows, it's a 2-year degree, right? You go to university, it's 2 years full time. That's kind of the standard thing. And they're charging you $50,000 for that, at least, in a lot of universities. And it's like, that's ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. Considering a lot of the things that they're teaching you are kind of common knowledge. You can order the textbooks off Amazon and read it yourself and learn the same thing, And that's what I did by creating this, right? So everybody has access to that. Okay, if you want to learn the same material you would learn in an MBA, check out that course. Okay, there's a link in the description for $100. It's like 2% the price, and I did that for several people. One of them is entrepreneurs. Okay, if you know the theory of how marketing works, that kind of helps. If you're trying to sell something, you're trying to reach an audience, you know what I mean? Things like this. If you're trying to predict where technology is going to go, well, they teach that, and there's like a whole science behind that. There's a lot of useful things in there. You want to learn accounting and you want to learn finance. Kind of knowing the theory behind both of those would be kind of important, right? If you're going to be in business, business is about making money. So understanding money is kind of important, right? So yeah, these are important things. The question is, do you have to take 2 years off of your life to go back to school full time? I would say no. No, you don't. That's a big part of it. And I can see why a lot of people are resistant to that. Do you have to pay $50,000 to do it? No, you don't. So there's a lot of alternatives out there. When online education really sort of became a big thing, I don't know when that happened, like around the year 2005, somewhere in there. Like it really kind of took off and became like a legitimate thing. There's been some alternatives. A lot of universities kind of offer their own version of the MBA that they normally would do in person. They offer that online. They still charge an arm and a leg, so it's not really an improvement. But there are other alternatives out there, So one way or another, I would encourage you to learn the theory, And yeah, you can't really say it costs too much anymore, nor can you say it's too inconvenient to have to like quit your job and go back to school full time for 2 years. You know what I mean? The other thing was that they did offer, a lot of universities, a lot of educational institutions will offer a sort of night program or evening program, which is good. So if you have a day job, you work all day and then you go to school for pretty much the whole evening, right? Most of the week, if not all of the entire week. And okay, you can work around your job in theory, but the problem that a lot of people have is that you might have a family, you might have a life, and that means you have to cut that out. Essentially, I mean, when do you see your family if you're going to school if you're going to work from approximately 8 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon or whatever, and then you're going to class from 5 p.m. to like 8 or 9 p.m. at night? When are you supposed to see your family? By the time you get home, everybody's in bed. So, that was the other practical thing. So, there's still a need for other things. That's why I created my course. That's why there's other alternatives out there too. I encourage people to learn this stuff if you want to be in business. It is no substitute for experience. You still need experience. Don't get me wrong. Okay, so if you want to have your own business someday, you want to learn this stuff, okay, start with the theory, but you also need experience. You also need to A, try things, and B, you have to be immersed in whatever industry you're wanting to go into. So you need to have some contact with it. What's really advantageous is if you're on the inside of it in some way. Okay, you can do that through various means, up to and including even more extreme things or more committed things like getting a job inside that industry, just to be on the inside of it to see how it works, knowing that you want to start up your own business in that industry, either in the short term or the long term, but you want to be able to get in and see what's going on, make some connections, get access to everything, So there's a lot of ways to do that. Get in the chat. There are 23 people here. I'm just sort of filling up dead air, really. Get in the chat, ask me some questions. This is primarily a Q&A. I'm here to answer your questions. I'm here to help you out. Whatever you're struggling with, whatever you're wondering about, let me know in the chat, and I'd much rather be answering those questions instead of just talking off the top of my head, advertising my course. There it is, in case I haven't made that clear enough. Right? That's what I'm here to do, so you should see that. Yeah, like I've done many entrepreneurial ventures, and I've also mentored two sort of types of people. One is like founders of startups. Startups are, and I mean that in the sense of more of an innovative tech type startup. Some people that are trying to do something a little bit different. But also in my day job, I work with businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, SMEs, and I've mentored and consulted for those people and helped them solve various problems, whether it's diminishing sales or whether they're trying to get into a certain business or anything like that. I've been able to help with stuff like that. So, the difference really is the scale and the fact that usually those people aren't trying to do an innovative type business. They're not trying to do something that is rare or is not mainstream. They're trying to do more established standard business models, right? Like things in the construction industry, for example. You want to be a plumber, you want to be a contractor. Not too much innovation going on there for a lot of the smaller players. It's pretty straightforward, Whereas if you're trying to write an app or something, that's an innovative startup. You're trying to do something new, right? Something that hasn't been done before. You're creating something new and different. So an entirely different thing, entirely different business model. The innovative model is much more challenging. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's essentially the heavyweight championship of business problems. And the reason for that is because, let's say you want to open a plumbing business, okay? Well, that's got many advantages. When you put up a sign and say, "Hello, I offer plumbing services," right? A lot of people that see that, first of all, they'll know what that is. They'll know what plumbing is. They'll also know that it applies to them, right? Because it's something more mature, more established. So things like plumbing, I mean, everybody has it in their home to varying degrees, right? So it's a known quantity. There's also an existing industry set up around plumbing, right? It's a very standard thing that's existed for a long time. You can go to Google or whatever, you can type in plumbing and you can see a lot of established businesses. You would have a lot of competitors that are doing the same thing as you. You would have, various partners that would work with you, standardized customers or clients that would work with you, like general contractors that build houses or they build commercial buildings, and they always hire plumbers. They have their default plumbing supplier or subcontractor that they work with, or a list of them, right? So there's this whole ecosystem that's already established around plumbing, right? People know what it is. And it's almost like people have already written the playbook on what to do if you're a plumbing company. You can find all kinds of examples of what to do and look at what they're doing. There's people that know they need plumbing services and they have a standard way of going about procuring plumbing services from companies like yours. So it's already established. The whole thing is all there. So it's very much, in a way, a paint by numbers kind of thing, right? Completely different business problem to an innovative startup. An innovative startup, when you say, "Hi, I've got this new thing," right? You put up a sign, "This is what it is, and this is what it does." Most people go, "What?" Because they've never heard of it. They don't know what it is. They don't know why they would need that. They don't even necessarily agree that that's something that they feel they should have to pay for. So you're coming along with a new thing that nobody's heard of. There's no ecosystem, no playbook around how you make this work, who would want it, how you go about marketing it, selling it, this kind of thing. That's none of that's been written. It's all like a wilderness. It's the undiscovered country, and you're the pioneer, right? So it's really like a completely different thing. It's a much more challenging business problem to do the innovative startup. Okay, Guido is here. Thank you, Guido, for getting in the chat. It's great to have some questions to work from. Guido is saying, do you think solo entrepreneurship is becoming more common, or is just the overall content on the internet advocating it that is increasing? I don't have any hard data for that, but everything that I've seen indicates that it is real. At least in the last 10, 15 years, there's been a definite upward trend for people doing stuff. Like, yes, there's stuff on the internet, like you can do internet-based, startups, like businesses. You could have internet stores selling things, or like what you're seeing me do here, like with YouTube, with content creation, stuff like that. Yes, you have that, right? But in addition, you've got people doing sort of brick and mortar stuff, like real stuff out in the world, right? Like I just mentioned, in the construction business, you always have people starting up stuff. And my understanding is that there's been a boom of those sort of small startup players across the board, Now, not every industry works the same. In some industries like oil refining or the airline industry, there's much more concentration in like extremely large players, right? You do get startups and you can get a lot of them, but it's still a higher proportion of like big players in those industries because their industry works a certain way. So I don't have any hard data on it, but it's been increasing. Now, in the last, couple of years, it seems like there's been a little bit of a, not recession, but a sort of stagnation in at least the North American economy. I don't pay too much attention to economics, generally speaking. I used to do that more when I was a CEO and stuff, but it's like, I don't really have a need to. The goal for me and all my clients is to succeed despite economic conditions. So you are aware of it, but it doesn't really affect what you do. You can't influence it. You just have to go with the flow, and you try and make yourself as resilient as possible against, sort of volatile economic conditions. But in the last couple of years, I get the vibe that things have, kind of stagnated a bit. So that, I'm sure, has slowed the rate that people are starting businesses and things like this. People tend to do more of it in a boom economy. People tend to do a bit less of it in a kind of a bust or a declining economy. But there's still a lot of it going on. And overall, as far as I know, the trend is still upward, for this stuff. So it isn't all just like a perception. There is something behind it. For example, recently, in the last 2 or 3, 4 years, we had like the AI kind of boom, right? There's a lot of hiring. That's kind of come to an end, at least for the moment. Most people agree it's going to pick up, but at the moment they overshot, they overestimated. That's how these things always go. A little bit more, too much exuberance, right? And they hired a ton of people anticipating all kinds of business. And they did get more business, but it wasn't as much as they thought. So we've experienced that. So there's a bit of it. But the way to know would be to go and look at the economic data from the region you're in. So if you're in the US and you're in a particular state, they publish all that. You can see, like, within the last 12 months, how not only has the economy been doing in that state, in that region, but how all the different industries have been doing in that region. All that stuff is out there. I don't know how easy that is to synthesize if there's people really tuned into it that are like analyzing it and putting it into plain English for people. But I mean, all that stuff is there. Where I am in Canada, all that stuff is there. The governments publish all this stuff. It's within their own interest to publish it because they're trying to encourage, foreign direct investment. They're trying to encourage, people to sort of move into their territory and set up shop. So they're trying to encourage that, and they do that by gathering all the data and publishing it, so it's easy to look at and see if it makes sense for you to set up shop in that location or that region. So you can access all this. You can see, like, for example, how much money people are making in different industries in your region. You can also see the number of the employment numbers, whether it's going up or down in different industries in your region. All that stuff is there. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Even with things like ChatGPT and a lot of AI tools that can help synthesize that to a degree. I haven't tried that, but that would be something that would be interesting to do. Get on ChatGPT and, like, say, for my region, give me some economic data and break it down by industry and give me some of the metrics. And are they trending up or trending down, or what's going on? And even just doing something like that, you can get a sense of, what's going on in your, whatever industry you're interested in. Guido says, I'm in a few communities that want to build side hustles by building apps, but many people are unable to even get a single client. I guess the market is more saturated than for Taylor Swift. Okay, now listen, having had some experience in the IT industry back in the day, okay, here's what I can tell you about that kind of stuff, okay? Now, I've worked with people in a lot of different industries, but IT is kind of a special case, and I don't mean this in probably the way you think I do. I've worked with a lot of founders that have like a software related idea. Okay, so either they're wanting to build an app and it's essentially like a product, right? Or they're more on the sort of, so that's kind of almost like the developer side, or they're more on the systems admin side, and they want to provide like services. They want to maintain the IT systems for businesses. They have skills in like security, cybersecurity services and things like that. They can like offer, or hosting or website design, or, all kinds of different things like that. what I've noticed from years of dealing with those type of people is they tend to be very technical. Okay, no shit. They also tend to be on the introverted side, meaning that they're not social butterflies. Networking is something that doesn't come natural to them. If there's something going on in the real world and they need to get some information about how that works, they tend to sit at home, get on the computer and try and find out over the computer, as opposed to more of what an extrovert would do. They tend to go down to the place where it's happening and talk to the people there and see with their own eyes what's working and, learn that way, by talking and seeing, yourself face to face rather than being physically removed from it and trying to do it all remotely and virtually, right? And as a result, they don't understand business. You see, for them, generally speaking, and there's always exceptions, and I've worked with some of the exceptions, but generally speaking, with them, the line really blurs between what's a business and what's a research project. And you get these people that they're really into the operation side, like they want to build an app or they want to offer this service and do these things, right? And all of their 100% of their thoughts is occupied by what I'm going to do. I'm going to build an app and it's going to have this function. This is how I'm going to do it. And it's going to have these features and this is what it's going to look like. And, but not a single thought to, is this what people want? What are people's reactions going to be to this? Who would want to buy it? How do I reach them? How do I convince them to buy it? What problem are they having that this solves? Oh yeah, I can guess the answers to those. I can just assume I know it all and guess without ever having gotten the tiniest shred of proof by even meeting a potential customer that would want this, But I'm sure they exist and I'm sure they all think exactly like me, right? And I'm just going to assume that, and then I'm going to create the entire thing, and then I'm going to find that, I can't sell it. And then I give up. And I lose, right? And it fails. I've met so many of those people, and it's very unfortunate because they've got half the skill sets you need. They've got the operation side down. That's great. Wonderful. But they're missing the most important part, which is that this is a business. It's not a research project. If you were just doing this as a proof of concept to prove to yourself that you could do it, great. Maybe you want to show it off in job interviews. You want to meet somebody that could give you a job, and then you want to they say why should we hire you? How do we know you're any good? And you say, check this out. Here's an app I wrote. See what it's doing there? You see that? Oh, look, bam, there you go. Right there. It just did that for you. That was real. That just happened, right? I did that. That's what I can do for you, right? So if you want to do a proof of concept thing like that, great. These people are awesome at it. But if it's a business you want to do, meaning that it has to make money, it's a completely different problem, right? What you may think people should want often is not what they think they want, or not what they want. Regardless of how much they should want it, they don't. You know what I'm saying? So you have to learn the reality, right? Not everyone is a tech super user that understands how the app is written. They're far less sophisticated. Do they understand the need for it and how to use it, and that it's even a thing? You know what I mean? So these are real world questions, right? That a lot of technical startup founders, they often don't have. They have a blind spot for it. And what I've seen, and not to go on forever about this, but what makes it worse is that it's not that they're dumb. It's not that this stuff is beyond them. It's just that they have a blind spot, and it's fueled by a lack of respect. They don't even realize that these are important things. They think that's just trivia. Who cares about that? They think like that right up to the point where they try and sell it and realize they can't get a single client, like you said. And then they don't know what to do. I don't know what went wrong, Anyway, the theme of this is why you would need like an MBA. Well, the MBA is like how that teaches you business. That's the business component, right? If you want to write an app, you don't need to get an MBA. It's not going to help you at all with that. But how to sell it, that's the business problem, right? So you raise a very interesting point there, Guido. That's something that is a very real problem that stops a lot of very smart, capable people. Suyog says, Sir Expert. Yes, that is my name. My nickname is Lancelot. Firstly, a big thanks for creating this platform and opening it for general audience. I would like to ask, is it worth to set up your own content, which is common in the industry, rather than getting a fair franchise in today's time? Okay, so I'm a little hazy there. So I obviously know what a franchise is, but when you say a fair franchise, do you mean literally a fair, like a fairground? Or do you mean it in the sense that it's equitable in some way? Content versus a fair franchise. If you could clarify that a little bit, I'll be happy to respond. Jonathan says, do you have any advice for dealing with egos in startups? How to attract talent and ethical people? Are haters in business the norm? Ego is forefront in my industry, so I'm solo doing it for now. Well, there's a lot of people that think they know about everything, right? I mean, I'm sure you have encountered, I'm sure most of you guys watching this have encountered that in life, right? There's a lot of, what do you call it? Posers. I mean, people that they think they know without ever actually having done anything on their own. They think they know how it's all done, right? Now, listen, we all start off somewhere. God knows, I had a hell of an ego in my 20s. I thought I knew it all, right? And I've since learned that that's kind of not uncommon. You get in your 20s, you think you can take on the world. You think you know it all. You think you know better than everyone. No one can tell you, and then you rush ahead and fail. That's the typical experience. And then in your 30s, you tend to be a bit more humble. You tend to actually open your eyes a little, and you start with the idea that I might not know it all. I mean, I just tried to do this thing and it really didn't work. So I'm obviously missing something, but I don't know what, right? So a certain amount of that is normal. That's what I'm trying to say, at least in my experience. I've been that person and I've witnessed a lot of those people. So it is common, okay? Everybody's got an opinion. And the people who do the least seem to have the most vehement opinions on how it works and how it should be done, right? Because they know, right? So yes, I mean, ego is definitely a thing, and it totally kills. It doesn't really matter what skills a person has. If they have like a major ego problem, it's a non-starter. It's just, that's how it works. So I can understand why you're steering clear of those people. It's just noise. Everybody's just shouting about what they think. It's just noise. You've got to learn to ignore all of that and just sift through it and actually pay attention to people's actions. What have they actually accomplished? Or if you're in the UK, what have they accomplished? Right? That's the real thing. Only the people that have actually done something successfully, or I would even expand. I would say only the people that have done something, even if it's like they've just tried and failed, they're the only ones that you should be paying attention to. Obviously, you want to work with people that have succeeded, but the ones that have failed, they've already reached a level of realization that all the crowd of people that who have never tried to do anything, but they're shouting about how it should all work, right? They've already reached a level of realization, like some kind of Zen level 9 thing that's above all those people already. They're probably a little bit more humble. And if nothing else, they know what doesn't work. And they probably have the belief that it's not as easy as it looks. And that makes them, like, first of all, shed some of their ego, and then also makes them open to actually learning new things. Things that aren't intuitive to them, they're actually open to that being true, right? So definitely. I don't know if any of that's helpful, but what I'm saying is that I agree with you, and I can see how that's definitely the case. So what was your question? Let's see. Are haters in business the norm? They're not the norm. I mean, they're norm among like young people that are at kind of the bottom, I guess, like workers. Generally, people that tend to be higher up, I mean, maybe I'm being a little too kind to them, but in general, they tend to be bright. They tend to be able to sift through BS and, be able to appraise a person or a thing if it actually has value or not. Because they've presumably had some measure of success, so they know what success looks like, and they know what isn't success. Guido says, makes sense. I guess the techie answer to this problem is just to ship fast, fail fast, but it can still end up in an endless search if you have no idea about the demand. Okay, now here we get to another problem, Guido. Now listen, okay, I don't know what your situation is. I don't know how you meant it. Okay, and I'm not taking any kind of pot shots at you. Okay, so I want to make that clear. But you see, another thing that has happened in the tech industry, okay, is this. I don't know what you call this. It's like a syndrome. It's where you've all heard the stories of tremendous success. Steve Jobs and the iPod, Bill Gates and Windows. You know what I mean? Like we've all heard those stories in the tech industry. And you see, in those cases, you've had a situation where someone just had an amazing product on their hand that was executed incredibly well. And it was marketed incredibly well, right? Nobody asked for those products. Some visionary said, I believe we should do this, right? Now, they just happened to be right in a big way, okay? It turns out that not only was their idea good, okay, that's the start, but it was executed very well, and then it was marketed well, it was communicated very well to the world, right? And then everybody who never asked for this thing saw it and went, oh my God, that's amazing. I must have that. And it was a tremendous hit. We've all heard several like very popular anecdotes of that happening, these popular stories, right? So the problem is you get a lot of young people that go into tech. And I've seen this with like even project managers and, mid-level managers and people who have never really done anything in the sense that, have you created a massive hit product that's made you your fame and fortune? No, you haven't. So they go to school, they learn how to develop, they learn how to write code, whatever. They work in industry, they see how you work. Oh, this is how you do it. You submit your code, it goes into the product, you test it, So they go, okay, here's how it works. Nobody asks for the product, but we make it anyway because we know better, right? Then we don't care when our target market, our customers say, we don't want that because we tell ourselves that we know better. And, you just wait. Once we force it on you, you'll see that we were right all along, right? And you'll just love it. Okay, that's how this works. You see? I get it now. I've seen how all the great people do it, and that's how it works. So that's what we're going to do, right? And what they do is they rush ahead. Now, what they don't realize they're doing, because a lot of these people don't understand business, they understand IT and they're amazing at it, but they don't understand how to sell something. They're breaking a lot of the fundamental rules of marketing. And then the whole thing blows up in their face. Nobody asked them for a thing. They made it anyway. And then they're surprised that it doesn't sell and nobody likes it, right? It's like, that's the problem. They're just making assumptions. This is how you do it. It's not how you do it. The only reason people think you do it like that is because a few people have had tremendous success by doing that and being the wild exception to the rule. But it's such a big, famous example that it's so popular, everybody knows it. So it fools people into thinking like, oh, that's how it works. And it's false. That's not how it works. Look at Hollywood these days, you can argue. I don't want to get into the political stuff, but you could argue that Hollywood is doing the same thing. They're very famous for ignoring the voice of their customers. Now, in any other industry, it's common knowledge. You just don't do that. And I've worked across 5 industries directly, everything from IT to the railroad, to academia. It's like, you don't do that. If people are saying, we don't want this and we're mad at you that you're trying to force it on us, you stop, But I kind of enjoy sitting back and watching what Hollywood is doing. It's like they're totally off the map. They're doing things that no one ever does for good reason. And they seem to keep failing, it's because they're ignoring what their customers say. So yeah, you ignore the rules of marketing at your peril. That's one of the things you learn in an MBA, by the way, So that big, long story to say this, Guido, when you're trying to get an entrepreneurial venture off the ground, there's several parts to it. One is the technical aspect, the actual operations side where you're creating something, right? And you guys got that down. If you're from IT, you're creating an app or something, you got that down. But that's only one tiny piece of like what you're actually trying to do. You know what I'm saying? Other pieces include things like, first of all, is this something that somebody wants? You need to create something that as soon as your customers see it, they go, I want that. I must have that. Here, take my money. Right? Now, does the thing you've designed have that reaction? If it doesn't have that reaction to anyone, it's a fail. I don't care if it does what you intended it to do. That's great. It's a wonderful research project you've done. But if it doesn't have that reaction to any customer that you can reach and you can convince, it's a failure. You see, it's a failure from a business perspective. The other things you need to learn is like, okay, how can you do this and yet make a profit? That's a whole other dimension to it. If you could spend an infinite amount of money to create something, then you could probably achieve the result, but you're under some constraints there too, right? So this is the stuff that you learn from the business side. Right? Now, I'm not saying that you're doing any of these things. I'm just saying that this is what I've seen. And it's been impossible for me to convince these people of this. They have to go and fail hard to learn some of these lessons. And a lot of them don't even learn the lessons then. They just know that they failed, but they don't understand why. So it's really interesting psychological problem. No idea about demand. Okay. Jonathan, my industry is creative. The best way to advance is networking hidden job market, but everyone crazy and envious in it, looking for a better way to reach peers and employers. Well, what I can tell you is I can remind you of the basics, right? Which is that learning how to do a direct outreach type thing to get to meet people, to have a conversation with people, to have them want to talk to you is good. If you offer them something, this becomes relatively easy. If you have something to offer. You see, a lot of people go about, like who don't do networking or anything, they but want to. They go about it from the perspective of like, okay, I need something from you, so I'm going to contact you and try to get it from you. And it's like, no, people are not interested to talk to a stranger who wants something from them, right? But a stranger that kind of checks out, that doesn't give you any red flags, that is offering something, maybe just something little, that might be worth your time checking out, especially if they're not asking for very much. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the general strategy you take, right? Even if you're only offering something like flattery, it makes the person feel good about themselves talking to somebody. Like if a student contacts them and says like, dude, teach me, like what you do is amazing. I would love to just sit down with you for half an hour, ask you some questions. Like, would that be okay? It's not a big ask. And why would the person agree to that? It's because they're getting something out of it. And what they're getting in that case is they're just feeling good about themselves. It's very flattering to get that kind of interaction with somebody. and you feel like you're giving back. You feel like you're helping a student like learn, steering them in the right direction, so you're getting several things out of it, right? Now, imagine how much more effective it would be if you could actually offer something tangible, like some kind of business related thing. I can do work for you. I can provide this service. I can provide access to this for you. You know what I mean? Like if you have something real to offer more than just sort of kind of psychological type stuff, it gets even easier. People want to talk to you. It's about communicating that. Suyog says, setting up your own content business or obtaining a franchise, which is a safe bet. Okay, so Suyog, so franchises are notoriously expensive, right? Like, for example, think of like fast food restaurants, right? Like McDonald's, Burger King. And here I am in Canada. We have this horrible place called Tim Hortons that sells hot mud, with a bit of pebbles and grit and stuff, possibly some tea leaves in it, that they sell. At least that's been my experience. And, what you can do is you can sort of, instead of starting your own restaurant, right, which might be considered very risky, right, you can say, okay, look, I want to piggyback off, McDonald's as brand or something. I want to open a McDonald's, right? So I run it. And what they do is the big part of it is that they take the strategy part away. They say, you don't have to worry about like what to sell, how to sell it. You don't have to worry about, branding, your logo, how to do a market analysis of like, what type of customer you're targeting and how you're going to do. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to worry about any of that because we're going to give you a manual on exactly what to do. So you don't have to think. You just have to do, right? So you could know nothing about business really, but you can follow its instructions and you could, in theory, start up a successful franchise, right? Like you could be the franchisee, right? So you have your own location, McDonald's location, restaurant, right? The problem is that costs more than a house to buy into that. Like they have very specific wants, wills, and needs for people that they invite into that, right? Because you can't compete on your own sort of merits and say like, well, I'm really smart in how I run a business, because that doesn't matter. You don't have to think to do this. You just have to follow instructions, so it takes quite a bit of money to do that. So that's fine for people that have that kind of money, right? For a lot of people, it's probably going to be beyond their means when they're starting out. You could like ramp up to that if that's what you want to do. But as like the first thing you do, that's probably going to be a bit of a challenge because you essentially have to have the price of a house and then some to buy into that. Now, there's obviously that's going to vary, but that's kind of a typical scenario, right? So that's the big disadvantage with a franchise. There's some advantages to doing it, especially if you don't want to think, you don't want to learn business, you don't want to make decisions on your own and like take the risk. It's a little bit safer in that respect. But the flip side is that they take the lion's share of the profit. That's also my understanding. It still makes sense for you, but you're not gonna like own the world like doing that. If that was what you were wanting to do. As opposed to like a successful restaurant where it's not a franchise, where you keep everything you make. You don't have to pay, 75% of it out to head office, and you kiss it goodbye, Manufacturing or production versus franchise. Well, okay, depending on the manufacturing. Manufacturing can mean anything from like, somebody working in a garage or in an apartment to produce like 100 units of some little thing, right? All you would need is the money for the inventory, for the supplies, and then you could technically manufacture it with a soldering iron, a plumbing torch, a plastic bag, and some crimps. You know what I'm saying? You could do that, right? Or it could be something on a very big scale, right? In which case, that's probably not a very good idea for a startup because it's just too capital intensive. Startups exist to solve small problems, small manageable problems, right? So you can start them for very little, but then ramp them up and own the world. Does that make sense? So those are kind of the two different things you're talking about there. Let me know if you'd like me to go further. Jonathan says, in my industry, competency is highly valued and it's the quickest way to be hated. If you are talented, you are competition. So you're basically... Okay, this is going to sound weird, Jonathan, but who cares? Like, so you're hated. People that haven't done anything hate you because they think they understand you, but they don't. I mean, is that like a really big problem? Maybe it is, depending on what your situation is. I mean, do you have to work with these people every day? Are they like bullying you? Are they like threatening to beat you up or something? I mean, that's obviously one thing, but just people talking, especially talking on the internet, who gives a rat's ass? You know, you do you. You know, if you got an idea, go ahead and do it. Manage the risk. Don't take like stupid big financial risks. You know what I mean? Like, for example, if you have a business idea, what's the name of this live stream? Side Hustle Ideas. If you have an idea, start it and do it on the side. You know, don't quit your day job. Don't like take huge financial risks. Try and find a way to start it where it costs like nothing to start. And several times on this channel, I've given a formula for how to do that. You know, like where you get paid up front and you try and sell it before you have the thing. And the idea is that if there's demand for it in the way that you're envisioning this thing that you could do, then you'll go ahead and actually create it, you know, especially when people have bought it in advance and they've given you capital up front that you can use to pay for inventory and things like this, right? You know, but who cares about like what people say? There's no matter what you do in life, this has been my experience. There's always going to be people that hate your guts, either because they're crazy or they're jealous or they're stupid. You know, I don't know which one's worse. It's like I do videos that help people answer job interview questions in a job interview. And I get a lot of people saying, thanks, that's awesome. And I get a lot of people saying, I hate your guts. You know, you fat bastard. You know, like, I mean, hey, I'm just trying to help people out, you know? And those videos are even made before, like, you know, my YouTube channel was monetized or anything. I mean, I wasn't making any money on it. It's like, I don't know exactly what problem those people have with me, but just anything you do, some people, like 1% of people at least, will just hate your guts. You know, you stand for something that they've decided they hate, apparently, you know? So, you know what I mean? Who cares? You know, you've got to be able to push past a certain amount of adversity. You know, even if it's just like, I don't know, your parents or something telling you, you know, well, I don't know about that. You know, you should maybe go back to school or stick to what you know, or, you know, thanks, mom, you know, that kind of thing. You need to be able to push through that to a degree, you know, because by definition, you're going against the grain. You're a little bit of a rebel if you want to go into business for yourself. You're basically saying nobody else in the world is doing this thing right the way I think it should be done. I'm going to do it and show you all, you know? So you need a little bit of a sort of rebel attitude to a degree, you know? We should do an episode on that. That would be fun to talk about. There's a lot of psychology behind this stuff, you know? Okay, where do we leave off here? Okay, so Jonathan talking about creative, all that. Okay, Suyog, I mean, setting up your content business or obtaining a franchise. We talked about that. Jonathan says, in my industry, competency is highly valued. Yeah, we talked about that. Sous-marin Nucléaire is here. Hi, Bill. Hi, Sous-marin Nucléaire. Thank you for joining me again. Feel free to ask any questions. Jonathan says, I'd like to take a leadership role in my future, but the talent pool mindset seems low level until you break through. Listen, Jonathan, what can be really useful, okay, is working in a different industry. Like if you work your whole life in one place, or even in one industry, you're seeing kind of a subset of how things are done and how the world works. You know what I mean? I mean, nobody can know it all, right? I mean, but I'm coming from this from a perspective of I've worked across 5 industries at like mid to high level. I've worked across 5 industries, and they've all been radically different. You know, the culture is totally different. What's normal for one place is totally not normal for somewhere else. For example, in terms of communication, how people talk to each other. Like I was at the railroad and then I was at academia and university teaching. It's like night and day. You know, in academia, it's like this like hyper respectful language and all. You got to really tiptoe around so many things. It's very hard to do. In the railroad, you had to drop at least 2 or 3 F-bombs in a sentence and slam your fist down on somebody's desk if you wanted them to actually listen to you. You know, I mean, it was completely different polar opposite cultures. And work styles, education levels, expectations, all of that stuff widely varies, you know, across different industries and different situations. Even in IT, if you work at like, you know, a massive company and then you work at a very small company, huge difference in how you operate. Absolutely huge. So, you know, I have no doubt that you're reporting it accurately for where you are, but that stuff really does vary depending on where you find yourself. So one of the things you can do for yourself, and I did this, is, you know, if you move around a little, you know, don't take stupid risks, but if you move around, you see how like things can be done more than one way, you know? And each way of doing things, they'll have pros and cons, right? One of the things I saw people just hitting their head against the wall, trying to solve a problem, not knowing what to do to solve this problem. Meanwhile, that problem had been completely solved 20 years ago over here in this other industry, but there was no connection between those 2 industries, you know? You see all kinds. So the more you move around, one advantage is that you really get more of a broader perspective of like how you can operate successfully, you know? It isn't just one way of doing things, you know? So you're describing one way, the way they do it at that place. I'm telling you, that's far from universal. Jonathan, and like when you were kind of talking about that stuff, all these like IT people like hating you and stuff, my first reaction is like, that's nothing. I've had like dozens of railroaders hating my guts, you know, like people that are pretty damn intimidating. Like none of these, I'm envisioning people in IT being these like little ice cream kind of people. So it's like, I wouldn't care about that. The second thing is, you know, who gives a rat's ass what these people think? It's like, if you're right, you're right. And you don't have to answer to anyone but yourself. You're going down your own path in life, you know, and it might take you a completely different place than these people. And the thing about IT is that IT can be kind of volatile. It's got boom bust cycles. So I've seen a lot of arrogance from people in IT, like, you know, kids coming out of university, getting jobs immediately and being very like arrogant about it. And then like 2 years later, they're all out of work. You know, and it really humbles them, you know? So watch how you behave. You know, if you're in a place where everybody's like hating on you, they're probably a bunch of morons to begin with. And secondly, who cares? You know, you follow your own path. It might also be because they know that you're better than them. You know, I mean, that wouldn't be the first time that's happened. Okay, this is an interesting name. Aish's not dead. Oh, AISH. Maybe I'm goofing that up. Is not dead. If the base of entrepreneurship is solving problems, won't traditional path like MBA reduce that instinct? No, why would it? And entrepreneurship is not more about solving problems than like any other kind of real thing. It's a business problem. That's what it is. A lot of people don't realize that that's what it is. They think it's some kind of weird technical thing. It's not. It's a business problem, right? You know, you can solve a technical problem and make no money. Is that success? I mean, you tell me. That's a failure, right? If you can kind of do some kind of thing where you sort of partially solve a problem, but you make billions and everybody loves you and everybody wants more, is that success? I would say yes. You know what I mean? A lot of people in entrepreneurship, especially technical types, they misunderstand what it is. They think it's a research project. It's like, great. You want to do an app that does this? Great. Right on. But unless you can sell it, you're not in business. You might be fooling yourself into thinking you're in business, but you're not in business. It's a business problem. If you want to solve a business problem, it kind of helps to learn business. So no, I don't necessarily agree with that. I know what you're saying. I think I know what you're saying. What I think you're saying is that, kind of like what I was saying earlier, to be an entrepreneur, in a sense, you're a bit of a rebel. You're not sort of just doing what everyone else does. You have your own ideas. You're a creative. You have own ideas, because engineering can be damn creative. It doesn't get a lot of credit for being creative, but it's damn creative. Just because you work with lines of code and stuff doesn't mean that you work differently than an artist. You're finding incredibly new ways of doing something no one's ever done, and it's beautiful. You know what I'm saying? So you're basically saying, like, look, everybody else is making software, they're making apps, whatever, but you know what? It's still not complete. I got a better way. I got my own thoughts about how it should be done, and I have my own creative vision, and you should do something like this, and that would be better in some way, right? And you don't want to sit in classes and be taught some rigid way of thinking that takes away from this rebellious kind of non-standard way of looking at things, right? So if that's what you mean, I understand completely. But the problem is that they're giving you the tools to solve the real problem, which is a business problem, right? Okay? And just so everyone knows, you could do a hobby. Doesn't matter what hobby it is. You could write code, you could fish, you could catch fish, you could skydive, you could do base jumping, all the stuff I do on a weekend. You could do that kind of stuff, right? But the moment you try to make money with it, it's no longer a hobby. It's a business. And it's a business problem. How to make money. The question is not, how can I base jump more effectively? The problem is now, how can I make money doing this? It's a different problem. And you only learn how to solve that by first learning the theory and then getting some experience at working at it in the real world. Does that make sense? Anyway, Guido says, I think many new tech entrepreneurs want to get in the software as a service business due to the high profit margins. And I got to admit, it's tempting since they only cost is your time and maybe some operations. Yeah. That's the thing. Everybody's tempted by cash, right? Dangling in front of you. They got the dollar signs in the eyes kind of thing. People want the money, but they don't want to do the work, and they don't want to have to understand the business, and they don't want to have to immerse themselves in it. That's the problem. Usually that stuff, listen, hey, if it works for you, it works for you. Nobody can argue with that. If you make money doing it, hey, nobody's opinion matters. You're doing fine. But I would say that it can be volatile. If it just seems to me it's like a bad business idea. This is just a personal opinion. This is not like anything beyond that. It's because I've noticed with monopolies, where I live, over the years, there's been a couple of things that have become monopolies, and they've lasted for a few years, and they make money because they have a captive audience. Everyone needs to go through them for some reason. They control access to something they want, right? And they make a lot of money because they're in that position. And everybody hates them. All their customers hate their guts. And all their customers begrudgingly are their customers. And they don't seem to have a problem with that. The company doesn't even have a problem with that. It should, because the moment there's another alternative, everybody abandons them in droves. And there's nothing you can do at that point. You can't get them back. They hate your guts. They've spent 10 years doing business with you, and it's been a nightmare, and now that there's some alternative just on principle, they're going with someone other than you, and they're not coming back. You know what I mean? And that's what you got to watch, because when you get into a business for the money, if you don't really want to be in the business, you don't have a particular affinity for it, but there's an opportunity, through scarcity or a monopoly type situation or an oligopoly or something, you risk that stepping into that situation. That's highly volatile. As soon as it opens up, as soon as technology changes or the market changes or the regulations change, bam, the whole thing it dries up overnight, So you can make money in it, and some people do, and hey, who am I to argue with them? They're producing great results, like nothing can challenge real world results, but it may not be the most stable long-term thing. And that's just my opinion. Because they're laughing at me with their millions, whereas I wouldn't have invested in it, I wouldn't have gotten into it, and they cleaned up. So who am I to really talk? But just an opinion. What I can say is that they won't be able to pass that thing on to their kids, right? Because it's gone. Okay, where did I leave off here? Check out my course, by the way. Check out the MBA course. That is kind of the title of this. So I have my own version of that. Best bang for the buck around. $100. It's like 2% of what some universities are charging for it. What a lot of universities are charging for it. And you learn the same stuff. And it's more flexible because you don't have to go in depth if you don't want to. You can just skim it. And you can do it entirely on your own schedule and go to the depth you want. So, perfect. I created that for people like entrepreneurs, because they could benefit from it. Jonathan, there's a certain public or in-person aspect by industry, the arts. So interacting and competing against peers is somewhat necessary to showcase. Thank you, great content. Yeah, you know what I mean? That's obviously a world that I don't know much about. I can tell there's, especially when you look at things like modern art, people that sell their paintings for 5 figures and more, it's there's obviously a whole kind of thing going on there. It's not like hocus pocus. It's not like an intellectual put on. There's obviously something real that makes a lot of people want to spend that kind of money buying those kinds of things. And it's been sustained for many years. It doesn't seem to go away. It's very real. But personally, I'm missing that part of my brain to really understand the code of how that works. Not that I've really tried seriously, but it's clear that I don't understand the first thing about it. Just like I don't understand modern art. I respect it. I can tell there's something real there that some people pick up on. I can't, but that doesn't, nobody cares. That doesn't matter, but it is real. You know what I mean? But I do think artists, for example, they're the ones that can create the content. Now, someone can create a painting, okay? And then most paintings, as I understand, don't sell. No one wants to buy them, right? But then some others sell for $100,000, You know what I mean? If you have the capability of creating something that you could just create from thin air, with canvas and a paint, and then bam, you can turn around and sell it for $100,000 a week later, I mean, there's some incredible business opportunities there, Imagine if you had an artist that was a tremendous artist that could do this, or had the capability of doing this, but then also understood business. And they were tuned in to okay, how do I want it to be a good piece of art so that it has value, but I also want it to have appeal to a lot of people. If I can get people to want to buy it, either by doing it a certain way to begin with or presenting it a certain way, I know a bit about the world. I'm plugged into the world. I know the audience. I know kind of how they think. I can interview them. I can understand deeper what they think. I could use all of that to my advantage to present to them in the most compelling way possible. I could really clean up. So you can't tell me that understanding the business principles would be pointless for that type of person. I think it would be a tremendous opportunity. you know? Guido says, totally agree. I want to build something sustainable and especially would like to build a product I'm proud of with low operational overhead and continuous costs. Okay, yeah. Like you want to make money. You want to do something creative. That's your idea. You steer the ship on it and it's a success. And it's a success every time the cash register rings because somebody says, yeah, I want this. It makes sense for me. I want to buy it. This is a good thing. It's almost like every time the sale happens, it signals you're correct. You were right. Your version of things is valid, Jeremy Mitchell says, good afternoon, sir. What are your views on the procurement and supply chain industry? Is it a viable career option in the long run? Thanks. Listen, I don't know enough to be able to sort of tell you like you should or you shouldn't do anything. That's up to you. And it also depends on what your goals are and what you're willing to, like what the success look like to you. Some people, for example, if they want to be a truck driver or something, a long distance truck driver, I mean, they don't mind being on the road like their whole life. Other people, that's hell for them. That's an absolute deal breaker. So I can't say whether you should do something like that or not, because only you would know what your goals are, right? But the thing about supply chain, what I can say, and I mean, I'm open to people chiming in on this, is that it's not going away anytime soon. And the demand for it will only increase, right? Now, the problem is that supply chain isn't just one thing, right? You have different types of products. The way they're transported, the way that they're stored, the nature of the demand, whether it's steady or, very volatile, like every aspect of it varies, right? It's not one thing. There are many different things within supply chain. And then if you want to just do one piece of that supply chain, which is like a chain of operations, you're just doing one of them, right? You know what I mean? There's so many possibilities there, right? Some of those things, it really works with economies of scale. So the big players will always have an advantage, okay, in a lot of areas. Not in every single area. You get products that are very specialized. There's not like a high demand, but when there is demand, it's essential. So it's very important that people will pay to make sure it gets there and it's done reliably. You know what I mean? So there's all kinds of little pockets in there and little needs for things that there's room for the small players that they can come in and not just work as like a subcontractor, but like actually have their own business that handles something. It's not just part of a larger operation. It's a specialized, self-contained thing. And there is a definite need for it. And the advantage is that it's not on the radar of the bigger players because it isn't big enough, right? Like, for example, I worked in small business for many years, and I'm stuck out in Winnipeg, Canada. It's a city that's like 0.8 million people, something like that. Now, back in the day when I was sort of, I was in an industry, I was high up in one company, and then I was running another company. We were small players. We did business in Winnipeg and the surrounding area. And we could do that because the big players, companies like General Electric, like huge, conglomerates, global conglomerates, they didn't care about the Winnipeg market. It was too small for them. Like, we did millions and millions of dollars of business, but it was too small for them to even consider setting up shop and competing for this market, right? So they left it to all the little players. You know what I mean? So, like, that's an example of like where there's a lot of room for like, little operations, right? You're not trying to be GE and do everything. You're trying to just do one little thing in one little corner of the world, and you can make a fortune doing it, but you're still too small to like have to go head to head with like larger competitors. that if they wanted to go head to head with you, they could put you out of business because they have economies of scale and you don't, you know. But it doesn't make sense for them to compete for that because it's a distraction, you know. Like they're competing for markets like 50 times the size of where I was. That's what they're putting their effort into. You know, why would they come to some little teeny tiny village in the middle of nowhere almost, you know? So there's a lot of opportunities there, but there's a lot of things. So some stuff might not be sustainable. It might not make sense. It might be very tough. Others, there might be a little pocket somewhere here where they'll leave you alone and you can clean up. You know, that's the thing about supply chain. And it's going to be around for a long time. Okay, I'm just looking at the clock there. As a reminder, if you are interested in business, get my course. You will not regret it. Check out the links in the description. I've done an FAQ type video that explains the course and how it works, what you get. If you're interested in learning business, this is the best bang for the buck around. So check that out, okay? Basically, you get a reading list of all the same textbooks that they use in places like Harvard Business School in their MBA program. So you're getting the same material. And then I provide you videos where I sort of guide you through it. You do the work yourself. It's like a self-study thing, okay? But the advantage is that you can go as deep as you want. If you just want to skim it, or you want to skip entire subjects, you can. You know, if you're not interested in learning accounting or something, you don't have to. You know, you could learn the stuff that you are interested in, right? If that's what you're going for. So, and then I'm kind of your guide, and I guide you through everything. Okay, so Jeremy Mitchell says, "Good afternoon, sir. What are your views on the procurement supply chain?" Okay, we did that one, viable career option. Yeah, so hopefully that makes sense, Jeremy. Jonathan says, "Problem in one industry may be solved in another." That's great advice. I probably should have gone into IT as a comic/actor. Hey, you know, don't knock it. I mean, listen, I kind of founded my career on doing that. You know, and I borrowed a thing from IT. I don't know if I should say this. Yeah, I won't give the details, but I borrowed something from IT, namely how data is passed through a CPU, like with the registers and the pipeline, basically pipelining, how they do that concept, to apply that to how vehicles are moved through a shop. And everybody thought I was a genius for that, because they're struggling. They had all the big brains, and they were struggling with, like, how can you most efficiently do this? And I showed them, like, well, mathematically, here is the most efficient way of doing this. And then they implemented it. And they thought I was amazing. I didn't come. I stole it directly from CPU design. But I mean, how many people design CPUs and work in that industry, dealing with shops and vehicles? Not many. So that's why. So don't knock it. I mean, I've done that a couple of times in my career. That's one of the advantages of, like, going across different industries, is that you can transport a solution. You can transplant a solution from, like, some other industry that they've used to solve a problem into a situation where nobody knows how to solve that problem because they haven't seen it. We're talking about the benefit of experience versus theory. It's like, yeah, I'm not knocking experience. You need experience. But the problem was, if all your experience is in one place or one industry, you've only ever seen one way of doing things, and that doesn't work to solve a problem you're having, then what do? Right? Well, it's like you borrow experience. You know, they've solved it over here. You transplant that here. Bam, it solves it. And then you look like a genius when you're not. All you've done is you just ripped it off, something you learned in school or something you saw out in the field, you know? So yeah, the more broader your skill set is, the more you can use it, you know? That's why, I mean, this is neither here nor there. But that's why to this day, I still like people that have eclectic experience, you know? And if ever, later this afternoon, in about half an hour, we're going to get into, like, job search and how to get jobs and stuff. You know, for people that are into that, it's like, a question they ask you in a job interview or whatever, and say, like, why should we hire you? You know, we're talking to 5 other people. What's so special about you? What can you bring to the table? And the answer is always, if you got nothing else, the answer is my particular, specific set of experiences. I've seen this and I've seen that, right? Not a lot of people have that combination. So I can bring in stuff that nobody else can bring in. I've seen solutions to things that nobody else here has seen solutions to, and I can bring those in, bring that experience in. You're not just getting another person with the same skill set. You're getting someone who's got some unique things to offer, So it's your combination of skills or education or, experiences. That's what makes you unique. So that's if you're getting a job. But if you're trying to solve problems in industry or in business, it's like you can do that stuff, and the people who do sales, like I didn't come up through sales, but like real good salespeople, it's like they know that like in different industries, it operates completely different. The way you sell something in a business to business industrial environment is going to be totally different than how you sell fast food to consumers, in another, you know what I mean? But like, imagine if the fast food restaurant now, they're trying to expand their market to include catering. Okay, so they're used to selling burgers to people in vehicles in drive-thrus, right? That's all they know, right? You put up a sign, you get a good location, and then the customers just show up, right? It's like, okay, maybe you're having negotiations with big businesses saying like, we want to cater all your corporate events. We want to provide we want to be the food supplier for your entire company that has like 10,000 employees over 5 locations. That's what we want. The fast food companies never negotiated with anyone. They've never like arranged a transaction. They've never, made a proposal and then had to sit down with people and work it out. Like, it's all alien to them, right? So you come in from like, I don't know, industrial sales, and you can go, okay, well, this is not totally alien to me. We did sales like that. I mean, we weren't selling food. We were selling like, I don't know, power product solutions or something. But, we can bring that process. Here's the process. Number 1, you do it this way. Number 2, you got to spend some money on like making sure everyone is in suits and they're presenting themselves very professionally. We want to look like bankers. We want them to trust us. We want to look like we can deliver on our commitments, and we won't let them down. This is very important. If we show up there all dressed in t-shirts with, like we're all greasy from being in near the fryer or something like that, they're not going to want to work with us. Things like this. You transplant solutions. Anyway, I'm getting a bit off topic, but I like this stuff. I like this. Anyway, so don't knock the whole, like, a problem in one industry that they're having now, unbeknownst to them, has been completely solved in another, like 20 years ago. That happens a lot, They're struggling with something right now in the fashion industry that has been completely solved in the auto manufacturing industry on their production line. I'm willing to bet you money that that's the case. The question is, how many employees are currently working in the fashion industry that in a previous life were also designing the manufacturing processes in the car assembly plant? How many of those do you get? Not very many, a comic, an actor, it's like, if you want to talk about how you make sales, I would be interested in talking to you about that kind of stuff. If you're like a comedian, you're an actor, you do live performance, even if it's something like dinner theater equivalent. I mean, hey, that's probably more experience trying to communicate something successfully to an audience or to others, or make a good impression, or making them come with you when you want them to get their interest. I'm sure you could teach a lot of salespeople a thing or two in different industries. You know what I mean? I can see there being a lot of overlap with that. I mean, look at what I do. Look at YouTubers. What do YouTubers want? They want to hold people's interest, right? Now, someone who's an actor or a comic, that's probably something you've got a lot of firsthand experience. And the difference with you is you can see your audience, So, I mean, I know nothing about these things, but I can already see how like those skills, and those experiences that maybe in a job interview, people wouldn't value that much. I could see how those could relate to adding a lot of value to certain other industries, Anyway, Virat says, sir, I completed my master's CSE. What's that? Computer science engineering or something? Soon. After that, I've planned to complete an FE. Listen, don't use acronyms, okay? Like, I'm talking to people all over the world in every industry. I don't know acronyms. And I've planned to complete a CFA instead of an MBA. Is that like certified financial accountant, something like that? Plan to get finance and tech domain expert, okay? Is it a good idea? I can't tell you, Virat, because only you can know if it's a good idea for you. It depends on what your goals are. For some people, that would be a really good thing. For others, it would be totally inappropriate for what they're trying to do. So I can't tell you that. You know what I mean? I'm assuming CSE means computer science degree in engineering or something like computer science engineering. I'm not sure. But if that's the case, you would have, a computer science degree and then you'd have finance. Those are two important areas. Finance is like universal. Okay. Finance is the study of money in the future. So it's about financial decisions. Should I do this or should I do that? Like that's a problem you get in finance. Accounting is different. Accounting is money in the past, right? That's where where did the money go? Did we make a profit last quarter? Like it's all about stuff in the past, right? Or the present. What's going on now? Like how do we process these transactions? That's accounting. Finance is like, what you're going to do in the future. How can we raise money? How can we make the most money? Should we do A, B, or C? Like that kind of stuff. That's all finance. So I mean, very useful area. It depends how you would tie those together. You know what I mean? If you're running a business like a startup, knowing both will definitely be important if you're creating something with computer science. Master's computer science and engineering. Okay. Character financial. Okay, I don't know what a character financial analyst is. I know what a financial analyst is, but chartered. Okay, yeah, chartered financial analyst. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there are two things that you can go into two separate careers for, right? Combining them, that's when it gets interesting. And you would have to have a really good plan for how to combine them. Now, if you haven't already done this, I would consider this sort of like the basic minimal thing you would do. Go to LinkedIn, type in these two things. So, like the computer science engineering thing, and then type in chartered financial analyst and do a people search in your region and see who comes up. See if there's other people that have that combination of degrees, and then look at what roles they're in. And then you can also look at, if you go to their profile, you can see their history. Like it's essentially like looking at their resume, right? So you can see their progression. They started here, then they went here, and now they ended up there, right? So if they're all like pumping gas somewhere, or they're all working as chartered financial analysts, and they're not using any of their computer science skills, that might tell you something. If they're all using them in combination to become like CEOs or business owners or something, that tells you something else. So that can give you an idea of like, is this a good idea? Is this what I want to do? This is kind of what I can expect. Doesn't mean that I can't make anything else happen, but this is like a sort of typical outcome, what I'm seeing. Is that what I want? Would I be satisfied with that? That's kind of the basics of what you can do. You can learn that in 5 minutes, okay? You might need the, like the premium version of LinkedIn. If you don't have that, they probably still have that whole a month of premium for free. So you sign up for it, you use it for a month, and then you cancel before the month expires, so you don't have to pay anything. But at least do that. That'll give you an idea of what's out there. Jonathan says, I wasn't knocking it, LOL. I said it was good advice. Okay, well, good. Then we're both in agreement. That's good. Virat says, Master's computer. Yes, we talked about that. Good. Okay, we've gotten down to the end of the chat there. In half an hour, I'm going to be back with another live stream on job search, how to get a job. In the meantime, once again, check out that course. If you want to learn business, you want to learn it with me, check out that course. It's the best bang for the buck around. And like I said, in the description box under this live stream, there's a link to the course. And there's also a link to a video I made talking about the course. So you can see how it works and what you learn and what you get, what you can expect, if that's useful for you. I do these live streams, Side Hustle Ideas, every Monday. So I'll be back in a week talking about this again. Okay. I just want to reiterate, if you are interested in being an entrepreneur, either you're in it for the money or you're in it for the creative challenge, or you're just a rebel at heart and you want to go your own way in life and not, be a lackey to a employer your whole life. I certainly respect that. I can understand that. Especially if you're young and you got your own ideas, that's great. You need to harness them before you get that pounded out of you by the world. You know what I mean? And hopefully it'll come to fruition before that happens. I encourage you wholeheartedly to do this. So, if you got any questions, come back, let me know. I'm here to help. That's what I do. I'll be back in about half an hour where we talk about job search. Until then, you guys take care, and I will see you soon.